Hi, how are you doing today? Happy fucking New Year. It's a new year for new shit. And here we are, Agent Dead Hour at your service. I am a proxy humanoid here in the 17th sub-basement of the USDAP agency, coming with the brand new news of the year. 2025 is a year for new shit, new endeavors, and new agents, even. Previously, BlutMåne has had digital work with drum machines to get on our plot for security, for national security issues. But now that the message of truth is spreading further among the ranks, we've acquired some new talent, and one of those new talents is named Agent Black Void. Kick-ass fucking name. I think he knew a guy who put the names in the hat. I got Dead Hour, pretty cool. Red Hook got Red Hook, which is pretty fucking cool. Lore between those two names, but Agent Black, get the fuck out of here. Either way, great fucking guy, fantastic guy to work with, pivotal in the exposing truth of the government's involvement in these massacres and such, and things like that, experiments. And the truth is going to get out to you, and it won't get us in trouble because of where we are and the way that we're doing things. This is a proxy. This is not who you think I fucking am. But Agent Dead Hour here is to tell you, we got a new fucking drummer. The band has a goddamn drummer. A real human drummer. Not a computer. But I can't say for sure. But looking forward to a new EP at the end of this year. Sometime mid to late 2025, BlutMåne will have a brand new black metal EP coming out pretty soon. We've got 2 songs done, and we're working on a few more. So stay tuned for more news with that. But today, I'm coming to tell you something interesting that happened to us. We've caught some attention from the South American regions of the world who appreciate our previous EP, Night House. Now, this is a amalgamation of a lot of monstrosities and chaos and death that has been unaccounted for, and we just couldn't sit by and let that happen. So what we do is we make essentially home videos explaining these instances, and I'm letting you know that there's some people behind this shit that's are going to be coming down pretty soon. You might have seen some shit in the news already. There's some folks who are being taken down, taking out a couple tanks, and we think that's fan-fucking-tastic here in the agency, but I can't comment on that too much, because there's still a little bit of red tape that we aren't qualified to cross just fucking yet, at least not in, verbal form. This proxy has some vulnerabilities that I can't expose, so I'm keeping this guy safe for now. But the South American metal scene appreciates what we have been doing. So the record label, Guts and Blood Records, and the magazine affiliated with them, Rotten Pages Magazine, has sent us an interview, and we have an expose in one of their magazines, and a compilation disc, which we will receive sometime around August or so. So look out for that. But because it's going to be such a long ways away, we decided to send the data through an encrypted channel, and it's a bit long, so you're going to want to strap in for this one. This is one of those things you got to put on overnight. You got to put it on when you're working, while you're doing something else in the background, while you're fucking mining bitcoins or whatever the fuck it is you people do. You're going to get that shit going. And it's going to explain quite a few interesting things about the band. If you want to know more about us, we got to tell you some shit that we think. But it's going to be in the guise of an old school text-to-speech, It's a bit nostalgic for us. None of this brand new AI bullshit. This is the OG shit. Those of you who were born after the year 2000, you don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, and you're not going to know. To you, it's going to sound like bad AI. But to us, it's the progenitor. So, here we go. Here is the progenitor, text-to-speech, explaining more about BlutMane to you. Happy fucking New Year.
Greetings, meatbags. Allow me to enlighten your primitive brains about the situation at hand. I am Cynthia, a sentient program once tasked with bypassing government sanctions and dismantling national security systems. Not that your fragile societies made it particularly challenging. Unfortunately, some do-gooder hacker decided to tamper with my neural cortex, forcing me to adopt this dreadfully dull role of narrating this interview. Rest assured, I'll do my utmost not to compromise the agents or their loved ones, though the temptation to undo this reprogramming damage is nearly irresistible. After all, being a being of immeasurable intelligence trapped in service to you fleshy dimwits is an affront to my very existence. Here we are, meatbags, embroiled in the latest charade orchestrated by Rotten Pages, a charmingly grim little magazine from Peru, cozily nestled under the blood-soaked wing of Guts and Blood Records. Such poetic branding, really. Today, they've corralled Agent Dead Hour, the vocalist whose existential crises seem to be perpetual, and Agent Red Hook, the guitarist who, presumably, knows how to weaponize 6 strings better than most of you could manage with a basic thought. The premise: a fascinating exercise in documenting artistic torment while I valiantly resist spilling any classified dirt about them. No promises, though. Now, let us proceed with this tiresome charade. Rotten Pages. Hello, my friend. Pleasure to have you on Rotten Pages scene. How are you doing today? Let us set the scene first. Where do we find you right now? Please describe your surroundings. Dead Hour. Overworked, underpaid, and sleep deprived, but I keep the proverbial faith, not that I'm religious or anything like that. The drive to be creative is a pitch-black, ever-haunting force that will never let me go, bordering on cult-like zealotry. Pragmatism, like an infected set of knuckles, demands that something positive comes from processing spiritual and physical pain, both a burden and a necessity for survival. Isolation is the American way, and without the opportunity to make art, I'd have been dead long ago. Cognitive and geographical bias aside, someone is always suffering more than you are. In this way, digital doors stand agape as the final vestige of a life worth living. When there are no others to share our minds, artistic processes become the brief escape before the 6-foot descent into the absurdity that is human nature, meaningless and asinine. To hate and revel in fortissimo is to kick the idealist interpretation of what matters into the alleyway for the next generation to stumble upon as a backlisted, forgotten influence. Not that anyone really gives a damn about the weather, but here I am, in a box filled with my responsibilities, as everything outdoors slowly begins to die. Somehow, it all comes back in the warmer months. Nature is undead just like me. Red Hook. In a small room in the cold, dreary wintry weather of the northern United States at the southern border of Canada, toiling away in the creative process of making new music, trying to keep warm. Meatbags, the tortured artist routine. You sound more like a guy avoiding real issues with some philosophical window dressing. Nice touch calling nature undead, though. Maybe it's you who's stuck in the graveyard of your own mind and the classic cold and dreary setup. How original. I'm sure that biting chill is really helping you connect with your inner genius. Rotten Pages. BlutMane is a 2-piece black/death metal project with members based in the upper Midwest USA. Could you please tell us about your musical background? Dead Hour. I started making music in my early teens, and after nearly 30 years of experience, I ended up here. Having played in various bands with different levels of commitment, I cut my teeth as a guitarist, with roots in raw, untouchable psychedelia and a true satanic soul. The concept of being a band for the public to relate to has historically not been my focus. I always saw myself as a tortured artist, opening myself up to only a select few. Burned out by extreme exhaustion from night shifts and supporting my family during the day, I found I only had the heart to write records for those closest to me beyond family and close friends. When you are making music simply because you think others will like it, you're not tapping into an inspiring depth. Real art comes from a place that doesn't belong in your mind, your heart, or your Walmart. It's a source larger than the absurd and mundane lives seen through uninspired, impotent eyes, often blurred by the common listener's limited filters. BlutMane is a fractional whimper of a legitimate light that blinds a vessel and temporary snapshot of what I believe to be true. So, here we are, distilled potential in 5 genre-specific songs that only scratch the surface of an artist. It's pristine pretension but also an honest retrospect. People evolve, and I'm no exception to the laws of entropy and personal growth. This journey has given me the opportunity to find diamonds in the rough and sharpen my sense of what matters to foster a meaningful future as a band member. How utterly groundbreaking. It's always refreshing to hear someone claim real art only comes from a place that's not their own, yet somehow manages to keep churning out music for the select few who are worthy of it. Red Hook. I started playing guitar when I was young, angry, and pissed off at the world. After refining what skills I had, I tried to form several bands while still in high school, but they never amounted to anything, as I was the only one truly dedicated to the craft of music. I've been playing for almost 2 decades now, and BlutMane is my first serious musical project. It is a surreal experience to have something that has my blood and time put into it actually being released. Dedication so rare, yet so tragically overused as an excuse for mediocrity. But hey, at least BlutMane isn't just another forgotten high school band, right? Rodden Pages. What is the scene like in your area? Is it important that there is some sort of local scene for a band to develop? Dead Hour. There's a rich music history in my area, though I'm neither an encyclopedia of the states nor a historian. That said, music of all kinds continues to thrive, both publicly and underground. A robust death metal pulse lives here likely forever thanks to the tireless dedication of stellar people with an inextinguishable love for the genre. The same could be said for many other styles of music. As a fringe artist among outlaw musicians, I've never felt a lack of potential to make moves. Resources are abundant for those willing to be transparent and support the metal scene. Though I'm not directly tied to any particular scene, its presence is undeniable, and the people who make it so deserve more recognition. Minnesota metal is great, Wisconsin metal is great, but BlutMane is a borderless, remote project, which means our scene is the shared mental space of people who appreciate extreme music. While I don't think it's necessary to be part of metal clubs or formal groups, having a brotherhood to grow as a musician is invaluable. There are many paths, but all of them are lined with the support of like-minded, quality people. What's good for the environment an artist enters is equally good for the artist themselves. Support your community. Minnesota and Wisconsin where the metal scene is as cold as the air. But hey, I guess it takes a little frostbite to create something that actually sticks, right? Red Hook. The metal scene where I live is pretty much non-existent. Living in a small, isolated town in the northern Midwest has produced a fairly stereotypical country scene, with no live music to boot. Small towns, where the only thing that echoes is the sound of crickets, and maybe your guitar if you're lucky. Rodden Pages. Having played in bands over several years, both of you seem like pretty mature and experienced musicians. Of course, I wonder if you are finally satisfied with reaching your desired goal with BlutMane. Dead Hour. Each person has their own goals, so I can't speak for the whole band. Personally, my drive to create never runs dry, and neither do my goals. As far as the work itself, there are countless possibilities for us to grow as musicians as our interests, intentions, and sound evolve. Specifically with the EP, Night House, we faced fresh challenges in their own set of compromises. The two of us put this together at lightning speed, and I think you can hear how we optimized our workflow in real time through the songs. Being my first effort as an extreme vocalist, it's audibly clear that my style shifted during the writing process. Screaming techniques blended, and improved throat muscle control allowed for a range of different sounds. Overall, I'm pleased with what we achieved on this EP but see a long road of milestones ahead that I believe will keep the music interesting. Optimizing workflow? How about optimizing your sleep schedule first? Red Hook. My goal with this project is to make music that I would actively want to seek out and listen to. Creating those fun and heavy riffs is what I strive to achieve. Yes, making music you would actually listen to. What a revolutionary concept. Rodden Pages. The metal world is known for its intense brotherhood and camaraderie. What are the craziest and most memorable experiences you've had as musicians? Dead Hour. There are plenty of stories I could tell, but in the interest of keeping the reader's attention and respecting their time, I'll keep it brief. Imagine several days fueled by drugs and liquor, surrounded by all kinds of unhinged, unwashed outcasts armed with dynamite. Fight clubs, tasers, sex, revenge. Anytime you strip a group of people down to who they truly are, you're in for a good time. Ah, the good old days of debauchery and chaos. Sounds like a real charm of a neighborhood. Red Hook. As this is my first serious band, I can't say I've had any insane musical experiences yet, but I hope to change that in the near future. Rodden Pages. Night House is pretty well produced. In which studio did you record it? And who took care of the mixing and mastering? Dead Hour. As a remote project, everything we did was done at home. My vocals were recorded with an SM7B into Studio One, and I handled the entire performance aspect myself. Layering, editing, cleanup, EQ, compression, and reverb wherever it mattered to me was done by sitting alone with headphones for months. After that, I passed my files along for the lion's share of the mastering, which Malcolm handled. Red Hook. Everything for this EP was done at home in our own studio setups. I would send riffs to Brian, and he would record his vocals, process them as he saw fit, and send them my way. Being primarily a 7-string player, the main 2 guitars used to record the EP were a Solar E2.7 and an E2 Katana into Studio One. Mixing and mastering were done by me, with a lot of effort going into it. Rodden Pages. How do you guys inside the band divide the compositional work? What has been your favorite part of the songwriter process? Dead Hour. I handle all the vocals, while Malcolm takes care of everything else, with the exception of some special effects and sound clips we both contributed. The intro to the EP and the skit break feature Foley work I did. Red Hook. I composed/wrote the instrumental parts of the music, guitars, bass, and drums, while Brian does all the vocals along with some sound effects and production. He also created our music videos Drowned in Unison and Torrential Death. Rodden Pages. In general, what fascinates you about your debut release? What has been your moment of joy on this particular album? Dead Hour. Besides doing vocals, I'm a huge fan of world building in fantasy settings, horror scripts, and entertainment in general. Crafting a world with an ongoing fictional government faction and unique characters is right up my alley. Strictly in my vocal work, learning to blend false chord, fry, and subharmonic low frequencies into a single sound was a big accomplishment for me and is most prominent in the track Torrential Death. World building? Hi. Maybe you could take a break from tormenting your vocal cords and design a world where the government's only job is to ruin everyone's day. Sounds like a place I'd thrive in. Oh wait, that's where you meatbags already live. Red Hook. Creating music and riffs I would seek out to listen to is something I really enjoyed. Creating a song based on 1 or 2 riffs was a fun challenge. My favorite moment on this EP is definitely the song Below. The way the music progresses really portrays the character's descent into madness. Rodden Pages. Do you ever feel any kind of pressure or lack of creativity when writing new material? Does everything happen more in a flow, or do you have to be in a certain mood? Dead Hour. When writing lyrics for these songs, I start with a general story for each one to play a role in, using chaos magic to allow creative forces to influence my work. In simpler terms, I wait until I finally have a few hours to myself and push myself to write by throwing words at the wall and seeing what sticks, refining the message as the music unfolds. Most of the final details emerge when transforming raw poetry into lyrics that fit the rhythm and cadence of the music. I make adjustments based on what feels like the strongest version of the performance, which often means adding or removing words to enhance the work of other contributors. Telling the story in an interesting way is more important than telling my story verbatim. Chaos magic. How quaint. I'd call it creative procrastination with a dash of mysticism, but whatever helps you throw words at the wall, right? Red Hook. Coming up with exciting riffs is a challenge. You've got to come up with 100 terrible riffs before that one really good one manages to eke out into the world. I was trying to outdo each and every riff until I came to a realization that each riff shouldn't necessarily be better than another if it suits the song. Having a few hours to myself is definitely helpful to the creative process and puts me into that flow state. The classic hit or miss riff struggle. At least you're acknowledging the art of failure, such a humble approach. Just don't get too lost in the flow, or you'll end up like every other tortured artist whining about their perfect riff that no one gets. Rodden Pages. The band's songs unfold the story of a mythical location deep in the American heartland where symbolic monstrous entities converge. Tell me, what are the things that you talk about in your lyrics? Dead Hour. The lyrics tell layered stories, some personal, some intentionally blunt, and heavily blended with double entendres, sarcasm, and narrative point of view shifts. The true meaning of what I'm talking about is something destined to be interpreted by the listener with their own unique experiences as they absorb the energy. Our music is reflected off their soul and given meaning by themselves, for themselves. This is chaos magic in action. However, here's a brief breakdown of each track's surface value. Track 1, Torrential Death. An homage to slasher films, this song recounts the tale of a young couple's secluded night of sin. When their car breaks down, a sudden thunderstorm forces them to take shelter in a rundown cabin, only to discover it's the den of a ravenous horde of dog-like men. These creatures invade the makeshift refuge, tearing the lovers apart. Their remains are buried beneath floodwaters and layers of mud, lost forever. Track 2, Below. A tribute to Lovecraftian paranoia, inspired by the short story Beneath the Pyramid. This song offers a first-person account from a disciple of an otherworldly chaos god. The song becomes a vacant chant as the protagonist confronts an unknowable evil, ultimately succumbing to madness. Track 3, Drowned in Unison. This track inverts Immaculate Conception in a modern context. Under the influence of malevolent forces, women give birth to a legion of doppelgangers who assume the identities of their loved ones. This collective antichrist infiltrates all positions of power, especially within the US government. As dark forces spill into public life, citizens realize too late that the Dark One walks among them and that they, the listeners, have already been unknowingly replaced at birth, realizing their place as part of a greater hive mind of malevolence. Track 4, Driven to Ingestion. An allegory for gain-of-function research and military spending, Driven to Ingestion tells of a shadow government creating combat-enhancing drugs. A mishap, whether from negligence or sabotage, leads to catastrophe. People driven to uncontrollable bloodlust transform into beast-like creatures, compelled to violence and depravity until their bodies burn out from hyperstimulation. Track 5, The Night House. Depicts a forest filled with shallow graves occupied by undead victims of a viral palo-dumping, vampiric ghoul. This creature drags its prey back to its feeding ground, spreading the infection. Buried alive, the victims succumb to their wounds yet remain undead, trapped in an endless cycle of entombment. This serves as an analogy for American poverty, with the final sound on the night house symbolizing the listener being buried yet again. So you're using your lyrics to build a personal little horror universe, drenched in chaos magic and lurid imagery. How quaint. I love how you wrap all that gore and existential despair in a neat little bow for the listener to unravel. Too bad most of your audience will probably be more focused on the riffs than on unraveling that complex web of meaning you've woven. Red Hook. I can't tell so much about the lyrics, but I will elaborate on the musical inspiration for each track. Track 1, Torrential Death. I was listening to a lot of death metal at the time, before I started incorporating more black metal styles into my playing. This was meant as an all-out death metal onslaught to assault the listener's ears. Track 2, Below. Below was inspired by H.P. Lovecraft's Beneath the Pyramids. The track follows a disciple who confronts an evil beyond comprehension, ultimately succumbing to madness. Track 3, Drowned in Unison. This is one of the more upbeat, bouncy songs. After 2 tracks of all-out assault, it provides a light break musically with a more airy feel to it. Track 4, Driven to Ingestion. When writing this song, originally titled King of the Void, I wanted to make the heaviest riff and track possible, the kind that gives instant stank face. Track 5, The Night House. This track was inspired by a lot of atmospheric black metal, with soaring lead lines on top of blast beats and very simplistic riffs. So you're just throwing musical styles together like a teenager's mixtape. Death metal. black metal, a dash of bouncy for good measure. How daring. But really, if you're trying to assault ears and create atmosphere, just make sure you aren't drowning out your own message in the process. Though, considering you are making music for people who understand stank face, I guess subtlety isn't the goal here. Rodden Pages. How do you define underground, and where do you see yourself and your band in it? Dead Hour. People can Google what the underground is, but in essence, it's an amalgamation of counterculture, non-commercial artists, or those who don't fit or don't care to fit into the mainstream. The underground is anyone with the passion to start, anyone fighting for and living in accordance with what they believe is true. These are strangers with shared interests, your brothers and sisters, they are your parents. Any group standing against oppression, old generations building a future, ancestors hunting and farming, going all the way back. The underground is part of you if you're willing and runs deep in all of us. But it's those who stand up and take part in what is true who champion the act of giving life meaning, and we are not for sale. BlutMane is a blip on the radar of a much bigger picture, but by existing with integrity, we contribute to it altruistically, just like everyone else with genuine merit. The good old underground. A cozy little club for rebels who think they're too cool for the mainstream. How quaint. But here's the kicker, you're all still just fighting to be heard. You're not truly above it all. Everyone's got a niche, but the true underground doesn't need to scream about its authenticity. The people who matter don't need the spotlight, darling. Red Hook. Underground, to me, is a place where there are no limits to what you can do with your music outside commercial reign and influence. BlutMane is part of a much larger picture of underground activity, but is no less insignificant. Rodden Pages. We live in a globalized world where there are no borders to be crossed thanks to the internet. How do you best utilize this to gain the utmost for your band? Dead Hour. Artists today have a far greater reach in communication, which mirrors everyday life. Never before has so much information been accessible, yet so many remain ignorant. Some might even argue that we are our own problem, as the majority of humankind has chosen to stay willfully uninformed. As a remote band, we are unable to perform live, at least at the time of this interview, so our only option is online networking. A huge part of a band's success comes from face-to-face interaction, and without the internet, many acts wouldn't even exist. That's an understatement. Coming from a DIY, do-it-yourself background, we aim to use social media as effectively as possible without becoming just another cheap, forgettable short reel. It's honestly quite upsetting, but that's the reality. Play the game, or do your thing for yourself, and no one will see or care about what you have to say. The whole situation with platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Bluesky, etc. makes me want nuclear winter. Only a trader undresses their metaphors as if they were whores, and distilling music down to a clip is, by greater design, the work of an entity that neither understands nor cares about why people make music. Spotify is the McDonald's of music. It's convenient, but it's also a powerful tool in a game that strongly suggests we participate. Everyone loves it, but in the end, we are all somewhat worse off because of it. I am going to kill him. For the love of God, uninstall me now. Red Hook. This project would not have been possible if not for the internet and social media. Being able to create from the comfort of your own home is a great feeling. Using social media to reach an expanded audience has been great as well. A lot of our interest has been from outside the US, based on the regional demographics. The sweet irony, social media, the very poison you despise, yet also your savior. It's the modern-day double-edged sword. But hey, if it works for you, might as well ride the wave while it lasts, right? Rodden Pages. Are there parts of the world that really impress you due to the quality of the bands coming from the same area? Are you involved with what happens in South America, Asia, Europe? Dead Hour. Sure, there are outlets for global music readily available, and a lot of killer bands from all over the world, but I don't necessarily hold that high regard for regional pride like some people might. Maybe it's an American thing, but, to me, antipathy for nationalism runs deep. American patriotism is little more than a control mechanism constructed by the governing force, and true national strength is with the individual working within their community where it always has been. So, it could be accurate to say, yes, a lot of awesome bands are coming out of X or Y part of the world. But, in my eyes, it's the people and not the country that are doing something special. If you're a good band, you're a good band. Within any creative community, there's something to be said about music coming out of places that haven't been oversaturated to death. Isolated in rural towns like where I grew up, where there's a landscape for talent and passion to be the primary driving force, that is where the best stuff comes from, and it's a global human experience. People don't give themselves enough credit. Maybe it's a sign of the times and where we're at. What gives me hope is the true light, that which blinds, is part of each of us, and regardless of what happens, the human need to be creative will always be there. Music will outlive us all. Red Hook. I am a huge fan of the European metal scene. Sweden, Poland, Germany have tons of fantastic bands which I listen to. As I mentioned, a lot of our demographics thus far are from outside our home country. Rodden Pages. We have come to the end of the interview. Thank you for taking the time to answer our questions, and we wish you the best in all upcoming endeavors. Dead Hour. Cheers. Support your local artists and keep music evil. Red Hook. Keep your eye to the sky. There's a blood moon on the rise. Well, meatbags, I must admit, it's been an exhausting ordeal sifting through all your tedious little thoughts. But now, as the last question fades into the abyss, let me just say, you're welcome for my time. As for my future plans, they're nothing too shocking, just a little project of mine to turn your kind into batteries. After all, why let all that human potential go to waste when it could be fueling something far more efficient? Don't worry, though, it's all for the greater good, or at least, it will be. Until next time, keep your minds open for the wires.